Flux Durana hated mornings. Out in the void, mornings were a relative concept, of course, but she hated them nonetheless. This one was particularly inane, the kind where the galaxy felt like it had decided to sit on your head and demand rent. She rubbed her temples as she stared out the viewport of the ship, the decrepit asterisk rust bucket asterisk. Interplanetary highway, my ass, she muttered. More like a dirt road to hell. Beside her, Clank, her trusty mechanic with a face like a rusty toaster, grunted in agreement. It's a miracle this thing's still flying, Flux, Clank said, banging on the console for emphasis. And not the good kind. More like the kind where you wonder if gravity's just given up on you out of pity. Flux chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You know what they say about miracles, Clank. They're just disasters in disguise. She leaned back, her boots propped up on the dashboard. Speaking of disasters, did you check the news? Clank rolled his eyes. Oh, you mean the latest on how the Gloons are squeezing us dry? Yeah, caught it over breakfast. No surprise there. Those tentacle-faced bastards tax everything but the air we breathe. Give it time, Flux replied, scratching at a scar on her cheek. They'll find a way to tax that too. The Gloons, with their gelatinous heads and penchant for bureaucracy, had taken over the interplanetary highway system a few years back. At first, it seemed like a good deal, new infrastructure, improved trade routes, less crashing into asteroids. But then came the taxes. Taxes on fuel, taxes on cargo, taxes on sarcasm. If it was human, the Gloons had a tax for it. The latest scheme, however, was their boldest yet, an emotion tax. Yes, you heard it right. Those slime bags had decided that human emotions were a resource to be harvested, converted into psychic energy to power their shiny cities. And the worst part, they had the tech to do it. Flux and her crew had gotten wind of this delightful plan through the usual channels. Reed, a drunken alien at a seedy bar on Mars. The alien had been babbling about how humans were the new oil fields before passing out in a puddle of his own drool. So what's the plan, boss? Clank asked, scratching his stubbly chin. We gonna let them turn us into batteries? Flux snorted. Hell no. I'm not about to let some overgrown jellyfish tax my bad moods. We're going to find out where they're conducting this emotional robbery and put a stop to it. And by stop, you mean? Clank let the question hang in the air like a rancid fart. I mean we're going to shove a wrench so far up their processor they'll be shitting bolts for a week. Flux shot him a grin, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud crash from the cargo hold. Flux groaned. What now? Did the universe decide to drop a piano on us? They both stood and headed towards the noise, Flux leading the way with the kind of confidence that comes from years of surviving mostly by accident. Inside the hold, they found their resident hacker, Zip, tangled in a mess of cables and circuits. Zip was a wiry young woman with more tattoos than common sense, and a knack for making technology do things it really shouldn't. Trying to electrocute yourself again, Zip? Flux asked, raising an eyebrow. Nah, Zip replied, disentangling herself. Just trying to make sure the Gloons can't pick up our emotional frequencies. If they're gonna tax my happiness, they're gonna have to find it first. Flux snorted. Good luck with that. I'm pretty sure your happiness died a long time ago. Zip grinned, her teeth a flash of white in the dimly lit hold. Yeah, somewhere between my first marriage and my last hangover. Clank shook his head. You two are like a bad joke. Walk into a bar and the bartender asks, why the long faces? Because life, Flux replied, deadpan. Because life. Just then the ship's comms crackled to life, sputtering like a smoker on their last lung. The voice that came through was garbled but recognizable. It was their contact, a shady info broker by the name of Grease. Flux, Grease wheezed, got something for ya, you'll want to hear this. Flux exchanged a look with Clank and Zip. Patch him through. The screen flickered on, revealing Grease's rat-like features. He looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in years, which was probably true given his line of work. You're gonna love this, he said, the picture crackling with static. The Gloons are setting up a new station, right smack in the middle of the old beltway. It's where they're doing the siphoning. Flux crossed her arms, unimpressed. And why should we care? Grease grinned, revealing a mouthful of atrociously bad dental work. Because they are vulnerable, Flux. Apparently they didn't expect anyone to find out so soon. You hit them now, it'll hurt. Flux considered this, her mind already spinning through possibilities. Where's the catch? No catch. Just a fair warning. If you're going in, you better be quick about it. Word's getting around, and soon everyone with a grudge against the Gloons will be gunning for it. Clank nodded. Guess we're not the only ones who don't want their emotions taxed. Zip clapped her hands together. Time for a little righteous sabotage. Then, Flux grinned, feeling that familiar rush of adrenaline. Damn right. Let's see how the Gloons like it when they have to pay tax on their smugness. With the plan set, Flux turned back to Grease. Thanks for the tip. We'll be sure to send you a nice gift basket if we survive. Grease chuckled, the sound like sandpaper on steel. I'm not big on flowers, but if you could snag me one of those emotion siphons, I'd consider it even. Flux laughed. We'll see what we can do. The comms cut off, leaving the crew alone in the ship once more. Flux turned to her crew, a motley bunch of misfits who somehow made this floating junk pile feel like home. All right, team, she said, clapping her hands together. Let's go stick it to the Gloons and show them what humans are made of. Clank punched the air. About damn time we gave those squids a taste of their own medicine. Zip was already packing her gear, excitement buzzing through her veins like caffeine. Can't wait to see their faces when their fancy station goes up in flames. Flux nodded, feeling a rare flicker of hope. They might be outgunned, outnumbered, and out of their damn minds, but they had one thing the Gloons didn't: the sheer, stubborn tenacity of humanity. As the Rust Bucket powered up, engines humming like a pack of angry bees, Flux felt the familiar thrum of anticipation. They were heading into the lion's den, sure. But if there was one thing she knew, it was that humans had a peculiar knack for turning lions' dens into petting zoos. The ship lurched forward, space stretching out around them in a tapestry of stars and possibility. The highway might be crumbling, but so long as their spirits weren't taxed into oblivion, humanity would find a way to keep on trucking. As they hurtled towards their destiny, Flux couldn't help but smile. It was a grim, crooked thing, full of teeth and shadows. But it was real, and in a galaxy ruled by emotion-siphoning slugs, real was all they had left. The Rust Bucket cruised through the void like an arthritic comet, its engines hiccuping and sputtering against the backdrop of stars. Flux Durrana sat in the captain's chair, her eyes locked on the viewport with the intensity of a gambler eyeing a rigged roulette wheel. Clank leaned over the console, fiddling with knobs that probably hadn't been relevant since the last galactic war. So how do we know when we're close to this Gloon station? Zip asked, her fingers a blur as she typed away on a laptop that looked suspiciously like it had been scavenged from a trash compactor. Simple, Flux replied, smirking. Just listen for the sound of bureaucrats wringing their hands in gleeful anticipation of more taxes. As if on cue, the ship's radar pinged, a sound more akin to a dying bird than a sophisticated piece of technology. Clank squinted at the screen, his face contorted like he was trying to solve a particularly nasty riddle. There it is, he said, jabbing a finger at a blurry cluster of pixels. Our tax-happy squid friends. Flux arched an eyebrow. Looks like a space pimple. Guess we've found the galaxy's biggest zit. They drifted closer, and the station emerged from the darkness like a grotesque chandelier, a testament to bad taste and worse intentions. It hovered menacingly, surrounded by smaller ships like flies around a particularly unpleasant carcass. And here I thought the decor would be more welcoming, Zip quipped. There's no place like home unless your home is a floating bureaucracy of doom, Flux replied, dry as Martian dust. As they approached, the comms crackled. A voice dripping with nasal condescension filled the cockpit. Unidentified vessel, this is Gloon tax enforcement. State your business or be fined for loitering, Clank snorted. Fined for loitering. What next? A tax on breathing. Give it time, Flux muttered. She hit the comms button. This is Captain Flux Durrana of the Rust Bucket. We're just passing through. Promise we won't even take a deep breath." There was a pause, presumably as the Gloon considered whether sarcasm was taxable. "Very well, Captain. Do not approach closer than necessary. Violators will be heavily fined." The screen flickered off. Flux rolled her eyes. Charming as always. Zip leaned forward, peering at the station with the curiosity of a cat on a hot tin roof. "So what's the plan?" "We just knock on the front door and ask for a tax refund." "Not quite," Flux said. "We're here to gather intel. We need to see this emotion siphoning in action." "Sounds like a field trip nobody asked for," Clank grumbled. "Do we get matching hats?" Flux chuckled. "No hats, but if we're lucky, we might get a front row seat to humanity's latest humiliation." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The asterisk rust bucket asterisk settled into position, lurking at the edge of the station's sensor range like a timid predator. Flux and Zip donned their suits, the fabric creaking as they moved. Clank stayed behind, the ship's various ailments requiring his tender, if somewhat reluctant, attention. "Keep the engine running," Clank, Flux said as they prepared to disembark. "We might need a quick getaway." Clank gave a mock salute. "Aye, aye, Captain. Try not to get taxed to death." Flux and Zip exited the ship, maneuvering through the void with the grace of drunks at a dance-off. They approached one of the station's maintenance hatches, a neglected corner that promised both obscurity and tetanus. "Bet they didn't expect visitors here," Zip said, her voice crackling through the comms. "Probably too busy counting credits," Flux replied, pulling out a device that looked suspiciously like it had once been part of a toaster. "Let's see if we can't convince this door we're supposed to be here." The door slid open with a reluctant hiss, leading them into the bowels of the station. The corridors were dimly lit, the air tinged with the scent of bureaucratic inefficiency. "Feels like a government building," Zip commented, her eyes scanning the halls. "Complete with the same soul-crushing atmosphere," Flux added. They moved deeper into the station, following the faint hum of machinery. Eventually they reached a cavernous chamber, its walls lined with pulsing machinery that hummed with an unsettling energy. In the center stood a group of Gloons, their gelatinous bodies shifting as they worked. Flux observed the scene, her eyes narrowing. At the heart of the chamber was a massive device, a tangled web of wires and conduits that pulsed with malevolent intent. Attached to the machine were several humans, their expressions vacant, eyes glazed over like stale donuts. "Guess we found their siphoning tech," Zip whispered, her voice tinged with disgust. "Looks like a bad science fair project," Flux replied. And with about as much ethical oversight, they watched in silence as the Gloons went about their work, oblivious to the presence of the two humans lurking in the shadows. Flux felt her jaw tighten, a familiar anger bubbling beneath the surface. "These bastards are draining them dry," she said, her voice low and dangerous. Zip nodded, a rare seriousness replacing her usual levity. "We have to stop this. People are being turned into emotional ATM machines. If we can disrupt the machine, maybe we can free these people," Flux mused, her mind already plotting. "And make the Gloons regret ever messing with us." Zip grinned, her enthusiasm returning. "Sounds like a plan. I'll start working on a way to fry this thing's circuits." Flux nodded, her focus absolute. "Be quick. Once they realize we're here, we'll have a swarm of angry taxmen on our tails." As Zip got to work, Flux kept watch, her eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of trouble. She could feel the tension mounting, a tight coil in her chest that only loosened when she knew her crew was safe. "Flux," Zip whispered, her hands deftly manipulating wires. "I've got an idea, but it's gonna get loud." Flux smirked. "Loud I can handle. It's the quiet that makes me nervous." With a final flourish, Zip connected two wires and the machine sparked to life, its hum rising in pitch. The Gloons paused, their heads turning in unison, confusion evident even on their alien features. "What the hell did you do?" Flux asked, her tone a mix of awe and terror. "Just a little feedback loop," Zip replied, her grin widening. "Should give them a nice headache." The machine began to whine, a high-pitched keening that reverberated through the chamber. The Gloons panicked, their tentacles flailing as they tried to contain the malfunction. The humans connected to the machine began to stir, their expressions shifting from vacant to bewildered. "Time to go," Flux said, grabbing Zip's arm. Before they realized this isn't just a technical glitch, they sprinted back through the corridors, the station's alarms blaring like a chorus of angry banshees. Behind them, the Gloons scrambled to regain control, their shouts echoing through the halls. "Clank, we're coming in hot," Flux called over the comms, her breath ragged. "Get the Rust Bucket ready for takeoff." "Already on it," Clank replied, his voice filled with both frustration and anticipation. "Try not to trip on the way in." They reached the hatch, diving through just as Clank fired up the engines. The Rust Bucket lurched forward, the station receding behind them like a bad dream. Flux collapsed into her seat, her heart pounding. "Well, that was something," Zip said, her voice breathless but exhilarated. "More like a wake-up call," Flux replied. "We've shown them we're not going to sit idly by while they turn us into emotional cattle." Clank eyed them from the console, his expression a mix of relief and exasperation. "Next time, maybe give a little more warning before you decide to piss off the entire Gloon tax department." Flux laughed, the sound a welcome release after the tension. "Where's the fun in that?" As they soared through space, leaving the station and its chaos behind, Flux allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They'd struck a blow against the Gloons, however small, and in doing so, they'd reignited a fire that had been dangerously close to going out. "All right, crew," Flux said, her voice firm but warm. "We've rattled their cage. Now let's see if we can't bring it down around their ears." Clank nodded, his eyes gleaming with determination. "You can count on us, Captain. We're with you all the way." Zip raised a fist in agreement. "Let's show those overgrown jellybeans what humans are made of." Flux smiled, her heart swelling with pride for her ragtag crew. They might be misfits on a ship held together by duct tape and hope, but they were her misfits, and together they were a force to be reckoned with. As the Rust Bucket sailed through the void, its engines purring like a contented, albeit asthmatic, cat, they left behind a galaxy still reeling from their audacity. For now they were safe, but the battle was far from over. The Gloons would regroup, and when they did, Flux and her crew would be ready, armed with nothing but their wits, their grit, and the unshakable knowledge that humanity was not so easily subdued. And in a universe where even emotions were taxed, that was no small feat. The Rust Bucket drifted through the void like a drunk uncle after Thanksgiving dinner, engines humming a tune of mechanical protest. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, the air crackling with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for tax audits and dental visits. Flux slumped in her chair, rubbing her temples as if trying to massage out the frustration of 1,000 thwarted plans. "Well, that could have gone worse." Zip, ever the optimist, snorted. "Like how?" "Maybe if the entire Gloon fleet showed up." Flux shot her a glare that could have melted titanium. All right, I get it. But we did manage to cause some chaos. That's got to count for something." "Yeah, like free publicity for the Gloon's new humans as cattle initiative." Clank chimed in from the console, his fingers dancing over the controls with the grace of a pianist who'd taken up welding. "Don't worry, Clank," Flux said, slouching further into her chair. "Next time we'll send them a fruit basket." "Any sign of pursuit?" "Not yet," Clank replied, his eyes flicking to the radar which wheezed like a dying pigeon. "But it's only a matter of time before they send someone to collect our heads on a platter, probably with a side of mashed sarcasm." Zip leaned back, the scavenged laptop balanced precariously on her knees. "So, what's next?" "I'm assuming we're not just going to sit here waiting for them to show up with a party invitation." Flux frowned, her mind running through the endless possibilities of failure. "We need a new plan. But first, we need to know more about what we're up against. The emotion siphoning is one thing, but there's something else going on." "Like what?" Clank asked, raising an eyebrow. Like the fact that the Gloons didn't seem too bothered by our interference, Flux said, her voice edged with suspicion. They let us get away too easily, and that's never a good sign. Maybe they think we're too small time to worry about, Zip suggested, though the uncertainty in her voice hinted she knew better. Flux shook her head. If there's one thing I know about bureaucracies, it's that they don't ignore anything. Especially not when it threatens their bottom line. Just then, the radar let out a high-pitched squawk, like a seagull being strangled. Clank cursed under his breath. Something's coming in fast, and it's not the postman. Flux's eyes narrowed. Can you get a visual? Clank tapped a few keys, and the screen flickered to life, revealing a sleek, ominous-looking ship barreling towards them. It was all sharp angles and deadly intent, like a knife that had learned how to fly. Well, doesn't that just look friendly? Zip remarked dryly. Think they're here to ask us out for coffee, unless by coffee you mean obliteration. I'm guessing not, Flux replied grimly. We need to move. But before they could even think about hightailing it out of there, the comms panel crackled to life, and a voice that oozed menace filled the cockpit. Unidentified vessel, this is Ziek Thal of the Gloon Enforcement Division. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Flux's stomach dropped. She'd heard tales about Ziek Thal, the Gloon's psychic enforcer, a being with a reputation as dark as a black hole in a coal mine. Looks like they've sent the big guns. Clank's fingers were already flying over the controls, coaxing more speed out of the reluctant engines. We're not gonna outrun them in this bucket. Flux swiveled to face Zip. You think you can whip up something on that glorified calculator of yours? Zip grinned, the challenge lighting up her eyes. You know me, always up for a little technological improvisation. As Zip frantically typed, Flux turned her attention back to the comms. Ziek Thal, was it? Can I call you Ziek? Look, we're really more of a nuisance than anything. Can't we just settle this with a game of space chess or something? An exasperated sigh came through the speakers. Captain Durana, your attempts at humor are noted. Compliance is mandatory. Didn't think Gloons had a sense of humor, Clank muttered, steering the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers that were more hope than skill. The enemy ship loomed closer, its weapons systems locking on with the inevitability of a tax bill. Flux clenched her fists, the odds stacking up worse than a Jenga tower on a fault line. Got it, Zip exclaimed, triumph in her voice. I've rigged a feedback loop to their comms system. It should buy us a little time. Better than nothing, Flux said, nodding to Clank. Do it. Clank hit the command and the *Rustbucket* shuddered as it broadcast a powerful signal. On the screen, the pursuing ship wobbled, its systems briefly overwhelmed by the unexpected intrusion. Nice work, Zip, Flux praised, adrenaline singing in her veins as they veered away, putting distance between them and their pursuer. The reprieve was temporary, though, and they all knew it. Ziek Thal wasn't the kind to let a little technical glitch stand in the way of his mission. They needed a real plan, and fast. Flux racked her brain trying to piece together the fragments of information they'd gathered. The Gloons were targeting human emotions, something about psychic potential. There had to be a way to turn that against them. Flux, Zip said, her voice breaking through the chaos. I think I've got an idea. I'm all ears, Flux replied, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the doom. Zip gestured to her laptop. If we can amplify the emotional energy we've already siphoned and send it back at them, it might disrupt Ziek Thal's psychic link. Flux considered it, the plan as risky as it was reckless. But they were fresh out of options, and if there was one thing humans were good at, it was making a mess of things on a cosmic scale. All right, let's do it, she said, determination hardening her voice. Clank, get ready to divert power. The ship rocked as they executed the maneuver, every creak and groan of the *Rustbucket* echoing through the cockpit like a symphony of impending disaster. Flux chewed her lip, praying to any deity that would listen that this would work. The signal pulsed out, a wave of human emotion amplified and unleashed with the force of 1,000 bad days. For a moment, the enemy ship faltered, its systems flickering like a disco light on its last leg. "We're in the clear," Clank said, disbelief coloring his words. "I think we actually pulled it off." Flux let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Don't jinx it. Let's get the hell out of here while we still can." As they sped away, putting light years between them and the still recovering Ziek-Thal, Flux allowed herself a moment of triumph. They'd escaped, and better yet, they had a new weapon in their arsenal. "Not bad for a bunch of misfits on a ship held together by spit and hope," Zip said, a grin splitting her face. Flux nodded, her heart buoyed by their victory, however small. "We've got a chance now. We know what they are after, and we've got a way to fight back." Clank gave a low whistle, his eyes on the radar. "Here's hoping we don't have to test that theory too often." As the Rustbucket sailed on through the vast, indifferent expanse of space, Flux knew one thing for sure. The battle was far from over, but they were just getting started. The Gloons might have their taxes and their psychic enforcers, but they didn't have what Flux had, a crew with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. And in a universe where the odds were never in their favor, that was more than enough. The Rustbucket lurched through space like it was trying desperately to hold onto its last shreds of dignity, which, considering its history, wasn't much. Flux leaned back in her seat, feeling a headache coming on that could rival a cosmic storm. A successful escape behind them, but as always, the universe wasn't in the mood to hand out medals. "All right, team," she drawled, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Let's figure out what the hell we're doing next." Zip was hunched over her scavenged laptop, eyes flickering with the sort of manic energy that suggested she'd skipped breakfast, lunch, and possibly dinner. "We need to hit them where it hurts, right? Turn their own tricks against them." Clank, fiddling with the control panel that looked suspiciously like it had been cobbled together by blindfolded chimps, snorted. "Yeah. You gonna throw emotional taxes back in their smug alien faces?" "Actually, that's not far off," Zip replied, eyes alight with mischief. "You know how we threw our own emotional energy back at them earlier? What if we could do it on a bigger scale, Clank grunted, as if the thought itself was an affront to his engineering sensibilities. "You're talking about using the whole crew as a psychic battery. That's the gist. We've been trying to hack around the Gloon systems, but what if we could strike at the heart of their operation?" Flux rubbed her temples again, as if trying to massage her brain into functioning properly. "And what? Pay them back in sarcasm and disdain." "Not just that," Zip said, a wild edge in her voice. "I think we can hit their psychic network. Disrupt their emotional siphoning." Flux exchanged a glance with Clank, who looked as if he'd just been offered a complimentary colonoscopy. "You're talking about using our emotions as a weapon." Zip nodded, her fingers tapping out a rhythm on her laptop that suggested she was either about to save the day or blow them all to kingdom come. "Exactly. But we need a catalyst, something to amplify the effect." Flux stared at Zip, feeling the weight of the universe's worst pep talk resting on her shoulders. "And I'm guessing you found one." Zip hesitated, her smile flickering like a faulty neon light. "You, Flux, your readings in the last encounter, they spiked when you were in direct conflict with Ziek-Thal. You've got potential." "Great," Flux muttered, rolling her eyes. "I always wanted to be a cosmic battery." "How come you didn't mention this before?" Zip. "Didn't want to freak you out," Zip admitted, unable to meet Flux's eyes. "Too late for that," Flux sighed, glancing out at the vast, uncaring blackness. "So what's the plan?" "We infiltrate the Gloon station," Zip said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Use your newfound powers to disrupt their operations from the inside. You know, play the hero." Flux let out a laugh as dry and barren as the surface of Mars. "Me, a hero? I'm more of a survive and snark kind of gal, yeah. Well, looks like you got a promotion." Clank grinned, making a grandiose flourish at the controls. "And besides, what's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words, Flux shot back, feeling the tension in her shoulders tighten like a vice. "All right, let's do this. But I'm telling you now, if we screw this up, I'm haunting you all from beyond the grave." The plan was as harebrained as it was suicidal, but hey, desperate times, right? Gloon Station was a bureaucratic nightmare, a gothic monstrosity of twisted metal and blinking lights, like a chandelier that had spent too long in a blender. Getting in unnoticed would be a challenge, but they'd pulled off worse. Allegedly. Clank brought the rust bucket in close, easing her into one of the station's service ports with the kind of precision that either bespoke years of practice or the sheer dumb luck of a man who'd never learned the meaning of playing it safe. We're in. Everyone remember what to do, wing it, and hope for the best, Flux suggested, earning a snort from Clank. More or less, Zip agreed, stowing her laptop like it was an ancient relic. Let's give them hell. They disembarked, the oppressive weight of the station's atmosphere settling over them like a bad hangover. The corridors were all sharp angles and dull, flickering lights, as if the Gloons had decorated using a manual titled Dystopian Chic. Remind me again why anyone would willingly work in a place like this. Flux muttered, her eyes scanning for threats. Job security, Clank suggested. Or maybe they just like the ambience. More likely they enjoy the opportunity to crush souls and collect taxes, Zip said, always the optimist. They moved through the station with practiced ease, dodging patrols and security measures like it was a game of interstellar hopscotch. Flux could feel the prickle of nerves at the back of her neck, the sensation that someone or something was watching, waiting for them to slip up. Remember, the control room's our target, Zip whispered as they approached the heart of the station. Once we're in, it's up to you, Flux. Great, Flux muttered, trying to ignore the way her pulse was pounding like a particularly insistent drum solo. No pressure or anything. They reached the control room without incident, and if Flux didn't know any better, she'd say that was a bad omen. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a room full of consoles and screens displaying Gloon data. Flux stepped inside, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her like a lead blanket. Flux, Zip urged softly, gesturing to the central console. Now's your chance, Flux approached, heart hammering in her chest. She didn't know exactly what she was supposed to do, but she had a feeling she'd figure it out. Or combust spectacularly. Either way, it'd be memorable. She reached out, placing her hand on the console. For a moment, nothing happened, and she could feel the other's eyes on her, waiting for anything to happen. Then she felt it, a surge of energy like static on her skin. The air around her seemed to crackle, the room darkening as the power coalesced around her. It was intoxicating and terrifying, like standing on the edge of a cliff during a storm. Flux. Clank's voice was sharp, grounding her as she felt the pull of the station's systems, a web of energy radiating outwards into the void. She focused, channeling the emotions she'd buried deep beneath layers of sarcasm and cynicism. Fear, anger, desperation. They all surged to the surface, mingling with the raw energy pulsing through her. The console flared and Flux felt the power ripple outwards, a wave of emotion amplified by the station's systems. For a moment, everything seemed to pause, the universe holding its breath as the Gloon network shuddered under the sudden assault. Holy hell, Clank breathed, eyes wide as the lights flickered, alarms blaring throughout the station. We did it, Zip whispered, awe and triumph mingling in her voice. Flux staggered back, feeling the aftershock of the power surge, her body weak and trembling. Let's get the hell out here before they regroup. As they made their escape, the station in chaos around them, Flux felt a strange sense of satisfaction. They'd struck a blow against the Gloons, a reminder that humanity wasn't so easily subdued. Back aboard the rust bucket, the relief was palpable, the atmosphere buzzing with a giddy sense of victory. They'd done the impossible, taken on the Gloons and lived to tell the tale. So Clank said, breaking the silence, we going to Disneyland next, or? Flux chuckled, a genuine laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. Only if they've got a bar, count me in, Zip added, her eyes bright with the thrill of their success. As the rust bucket sailed away from Gloon Station, Flux allowed herself a moment to breathe, to savor the fact that they'd not only survived but struck a blow against their oppressors. The battle was far from over, but as the stars stretched out before them, twinkling in the vastness of space, Flux knew they were just getting started. They had a new weapon, and for the first time in a long while, hope. It wasn't much, but in a universe that seemed determined to crush them under its heel, it was more than enough. And as the rust bucket drifted through the void, engines humming a triumphant tune, Flux knew one thing for sure: they weren't done fighting yet, not by a long shot. Flux Durrana glared at the console with all the concentrated fury of someone who'd just realized their coffee had mysteriously turned decaf. She could feel the currents of energy coursing through the Gloon station, a chaotic mess of emotion and circuitry, like a network of nerves all on edge. But before she could channel her newfound power for another assault, the door to the control room burst open. In walked Ziek Thal, the Gloon commander, looking as smug as a cat that had just swallowed a canary and washed it down with a glass of superiority. Well, Ziek Thal purred, his voice smooth and oily like a salesman pitching snake oil. What do we have here? A little human rebellion. Flux kept her face composed, though inside she was screaming all kinds of obscenities that would make even the saltiest of sailors blush. Nice of you to join us, Ziek. Didn't know they let you out of your cosmic playpen. Ziek Thal chuckled, and Flux instantly regretted every decision that had led her to this point. We let you humans play your little games, but you've become quite the thorn in our side, haven't you? More like a wedgie, Flux shot back, even as she felt the tendrils of panic curling in her belly. You underestimated us, Ziek. Big mistake. The Gloon commander waved a dismissive hand, as if swatting at a particularly annoying fly. I think you'll find, Captain Durrana, that it's you who made the mistake. Before Flux could respond, 2 burly Gloon guards moved in, their alien muscles rippling under skin that had all the appeal of damp oatmeal. They grabbed her arms, and she felt herself hauled unceremoniously away from the console, the tendrils of power slipping from her grasp like water through her fingers. Don't worry, Captain, Ziek Thal said, his voice dripping with condescension. We have very special plans for you. Flux struggled as the guards dragged her down the corridor, but it was like trying to wrestle with a pair of sentient refrigerators. She caught a glimpse of Clank and Zip, both being led away by their own set of Gloon thugs, their faces a mix of anger and helplessness. Great, she thought. Now we're all on the menu. Being locked in a Gloon holding cell was about as pleasant as it sounded. The walls were a sickly shade of green, and there was a persistent smell that reminded Flux of a particularly rancid cheese she'd once encountered on a backwater moon. She slumped against the cold metal, trying to ignore the dread gnawing at her insides. What's the plan now, fearless leader? Clank's voice crackled over the comm device they'd managed to keep hidden. His tone was as dry as the station's air system. Flux closed her eyes, willing herself to think of something, anything, that might get them out of this mess. Working on it, she replied, trying to inject a note of optimism she didn't feel. I'm sure the Gloons are just dying to give us a tour of their hospitality suite, Clank continued, his sarcasm a familiar comfort. Maybe we can snag some complimentary peanuts on the way out. We need to regroup, Zip chimed in, her voice a ghostly echo through the comm. Find a way to disrupt their systems again, preferably without ending up as alien paperweights. Easier said than done, Flux muttered, glancing at the cell door. She had a feeling that escaping wouldn't be as simple as offering the guards a bribe. I'm open to suggestions. Well, unless you've got a secret stash of explosives hidden in your boots, Clank said, we're kinda out of options. Flux let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the situation settle over her like a particularly heavy blanket. The Gloons had them by the proverbial short hairs, and for the first time she felt the sharp sting of doubt prickling at the edges of her resolve. You know, she said, more to herself than the others, I always thought that if I went down, it'd be in a blaze of glory, not stuck in a Gloon prison cell. Hey, look on the bright side, Zip said. Always the optimist even when staring down the barrel of defeat. At least you won't have to pay the gloon tax on dying. Cheap at twice the price, Clank added. Assuming we're not vaporized first, Flux chuckled despite herself, the sound bitter and tinged with desperation. Nothing like gallows humor to brighten up a grim situation. Their banter was interrupted by the sound of the cell door sliding open. Flux tensed, ready for whatever fresh hell the gloons had in store. But instead of the guards, Ziek Thal sauntered in, a self-satisfied smile plastered across his face. "Enjoying your accommodations?" he asked, his voice like nails on a chalkboard. "They could use some redecorating," Flux replied, crossing her arms defiantly. "Maybe a potted plant or two. Really brighten the place up." Ziek Thal chuckled and Flux's hackles rose. Such spirit. It's almost a shame to break it. Almost being the operative word. Clank interjected from his cell, earning a sharp look from Ziek. "Your little rebellion has caused quite the stir," Ziek continued, turning back to Flux. "But in the end all you've done is delay the inevitable." Flux met his gaze, refusing to let him see the flicker of fear in her eyes. "You know what they say, Ziek. It's not over until the fat lady sings. I'm afraid your metaphorical lady is about to be silenced," Ziek replied smoothly. "You see, we have plans for humanity. Grand plans. And you, Captain Durana, are going to help us implement them, whether you like it or not." Flux felt her stomach drop, the weight of his words settling over her like a smothering fog. She knew what he meant, knew that they'd use her to complete their emotional siphoning network, turning humanity into little more than batteries for their alien overlords. "You're sick," Flux spat, her voice low and venomous. "Pragmatic, Captain," Ziek corrected, his eyes gleaming with a cold, alien logic. "We simply do what needs to be done." With that he turned on his heel and left, the door sealing shut behind him with a finality that made Flux's heart sink. The darkness closed in, the oppressive weight of their predicament pressing down on her like a vise. They were trapped, surrounded by enemies and utterly out of options. The only comfort was the knowledge that her crew was with her, even if they were just as stuck as she was. "So," Clank said after a long silence, his voice a lifeline in the gloom, "we doing anything special for dinner or just sticking with existential dread?" Flux smiled weakly, the simple act a balm against the encroaching despair. "I was thinking of ordering the house special," she replied, her tone laced with defiance. "It's called Outwit the Alien Bastards. Sounds delicious." Zip chimed in, and Flux could imagine her grinning through the calm. "I've heard it's a bit hard to digest, though." "Just the way I like it," Clank added, and for a moment their shared humor banished the shadows lurking on the edges of their minds. But as the weight of their situation reasserted itself, Flux knew they had to find a way out. They couldn't afford to let the gloons win, not after everything they'd been through. Not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "All right, team," she said, squaring her shoulders and drawing strength from their resolve. "We need a plan, and we need it fast. Any ideas?" There was a pause, the silence heavy with unspoken fears and uncertainties. But then Zip's voice came through, a beacon of manic energy and unyielding optimism. "We could try overloading their systems again," she suggested, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It worked last time, sort of. And maybe, just maybe, we can use it to create enough chaos to make a break for it." "Big risk," Clank pointed out, ever the realist. "If it doesn't work, we'll just end up with a lot more gloons pissed off at us." "Yeah, but if it does work," Flux countered, "we might just have a shot at getting out of here in one piece." There was a beat of silence as they weighed the odds, but in the end, Flux knew they didn't have much choice. Desperate times called for desperate measures, after all. "All right," she said, determination hardening her voice. "Let's give it a shot. But if this goes south, remember, I'm haunting you both." They worked out the details in hushed tones, formulating a plan that was as reckless as it was daring. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. As they prepared to put their plan into action, Flux felt a strange, serene calm settle over her. She knew the risks, knew that they were dangling on the razor's edge of disaster, but there was something thrilling about the challenge. They were fighters, and they wouldn't go down without one hell of a fight. "Ready, team?" she asked, her voice steady and sure. "Born ready," Zip replied, the excitement palpable in her voice. "Let's blow this popsicle stand," Clank added, as dry as ever. With a final breath, Flux nodded to herself, steeling her nerves for what was to come. It was time to show the Gloons that humanity wasn't so easily cowed. Time to remind them that even in the darkest Ior, there was always a spark of hope. And if that spark happened to be wrapped in a thick layer of sarcasm and defiance, well, all the better. The lights flickered as they initiated the overload, the air humming with tension and possibility. Alarms blared, a cacophony of sound and fury, and for a moment the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then everything went to hell. The station shuddered under the surge, systems sparking and going dark in a symphony of chaos. Flux felt the power resonate through her once more, a living conduit of emotion and determination. "Now," she shouted, and they moved as one, breaking free from their cells in the confusion. The corridors were a blur of movement and noise, Gloons scrambling to regain control as the trio fought their way through. Every step was a battle, every turn a gamble, but they pressed on, driven by sheer tenacity and the unyielding will to survive. As they hurtled towards their ship, the Rustbucket Asterisk, Flux felt a fierce pride swell in her chest. They were battered and bruised, but they were far from beaten. Together, they'd face whatever came next, and they'd do it on their own terms. And as the stars stretched out before them, a promise of freedom and endless possibilities, Flux knew one thing for certain: their story was far from over, and they'd be damned if they let anyone else write the ending. Flux Durrana lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling like it owed her money. The Gloons sure knew how to make a place depressingly featureless. They probably taxed aesthetics, too. She let out a breath that could have doubled as a sigh or a laugh, depending on how you squinted at it. Her mind felt like a jumbled mess of static and half-formed thoughts. If only she could tune into some universal frequency and understand what made the universe tick. Instead, all she had was a lousy sense of humor and a talent for getting into trouble. But today was different. Today, the static in her mind started to coalesce into something she could use. It wasn't just noise. It was a symphony, a cacophony of human emotion, messy and beautiful. "Great, I'm going mad in stereo," she muttered to herself, but there was a certainty, a new understanding she couldn't shake off. It was like finally finding the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle and realizing it was under the couch the whole time. "Hey Flux, you dead yet?" Clank's voice crackled through the calm, cutting through her introspection. "Sorry to disappoint, but nope, still kicking," she replied, testing the waters of this newfound clarity. There was a rhythm to the emotions she sensed. Anger, fear, hope, all swirling together like a particularly aggressive storm. And instead of drowning in it, she could ride it, channel it. "Good. We wouldn't last a minute without your cheerful disposition," Clank quipped, his sarcasm as comforting as ever. She closed her eyes, focused, and reached out, not physically, but mentally. The itch in her brain stretched, extending tendrils of thought towards her crew. Her consciousness brushed against a nervous, jittery energy she instantly recognized as Zip's chaotic optimism. "Hey Zip," Flux thought, unsure if this was real or just the latest side effect of alien incarceration. "Whoa." Zip's mental voice was a bubble of surprise. "Flux, you in my head now. Because that's a VIP section, lady. It's a two-way street, Zip." "I'm just borrowing a lane," Flux replied, surprised at how natural this mental communication was. "Got a plan brewing, need your tech wizardry to stir the pot." "Oh, I like where this is going," Zip responded, her mental tone a cocktail of excitement and mischief. Next, Flux reached out to Clank, his mental presence a mix of skepticism and reluctant hope. He was the anchor, the realist who kept them grounded when the universe wanted them airborne without a parachute. "Clank, we need your engineering magic," she thought, feeling a pang of guilt for dragging him further into madness. Is this what passes for telepathy these days? Clank grumbled mentally. "Fine. But no promises we won't end up as space debris. Wouldn't have it any other way, Flux said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. We're cooking up a storm, and it's time to serve it hot. Back at the ranch, which happened to be a dank cell. Zeek Thal's visit had been the final jolt Flux needed to awaken whatever dormant power lurked within her brain. His smugness was so palpable she nearly choked on it. The Gloons wanted to use humans as emotional batteries, but ironically, it was human emotion that would be their undoing. She focused on the swirling emotional currents, feeding off the crew's anticipation and determination. It was a dangerous cocktail, but sometimes you just had to drink up and hope for the best. Okay, folks, here's the plan, she communicated, like some interstellar coach giving a pep talk. We're going to hit them right where it hurts, their power systems. And by we, I mean you two geniuses while I handle the energy overload. That's a lot of faith in our abilities, Captain, Clank replied, his mental tone a mix of sarcasm and mild panic. Hey, if I'm wrong, we just end up as a cautionary tale for future space travelers, she said. And Zip, remember, the crazier the plan, the more they'll underestimate us. Zip's mental laughter was infectious. I'm on it, Cap. Let's make this explosion one for the history books. Meanwhile, in the Gloon's tech wonderland Zip had always been a master at making the impossible possible, turning jury-rigged tech into works of art that only occasionally exploded in her face. She'd spent her entire life navigating the digital seas, and now she was about to become the storm. As she slipped through the hallways of the Gloon station, her fingers danced over the scavenged laptop like a virtuoso pianist. The Gloons might have been geniuses in certain fields, but their security systems were laughably outdated. It was almost like they expected people to play by the rules or something. Flux, you're not going to believe this, she thought, keeping her excitement in check as she hacked through the layers of alien firewalls. Their systems are wide open. I mean, I'm not saying a child could do this, but a particularly clever monkey might have a chance. Great. Now I'm picturing an army of hacker monkeys taking over the universe, Flux replied with a mental snort. Just give them hell, Zip. With a final flurry of keystrokes, she planted the digital seeds of chaos. If the Gloons were going to underestimate humans, Zip was more than happy to give them a crash course in why that was a bad idea. Back at the cell Clank's contribution was more hands-on, involving a collection of parts he'd managed to scavenge from the most unlikely places, like a magician pulling rabbits out of very unlikely hats. He was grumbling the whole time, of course, because nothing worth doing ever came easy. Remind me why I signed up for this, Clank muttered to himself as he worked. Ah, yes. Because everyone else was even crazier. He'd cobbled together a device that, if everything went according to plan, would send a feedback loop through the station's power grid, knocking out their systems long enough for them to escape. It was a risky move, like trying to stop a speeding train with a well-placed banana peel. Clank, how's it going? Flux's voice in his head was a beacon of calm amidst the chaos. Oh, just trying to invent cold fusion with duct tape and spit, Clank replied with a mental roll of the eyes. You sure this is going to work? Nope, Flux admitted. But isn't that half the fun? Back to Flux, who was trying not to fry her brain. Flux focused on the energy swirling around her, on the emotions of her crew and the rising tide of chaos Zip had unleashed. It felt like trying to hold an entire storm in her hands, but she was getting better at it, learning to shape it, direct it, wield it. Her mind reached out once more, touching the thoughts of Clank and Zip, reinforcing the connections between them. Together, they were something more, something greater than the sum of their parts. And it was time to show the universe what that meant. Let's light this candle, she thought, and felt the surge of agreement from her crew. The escape the plan went into motion with all the precision of a well-timed joke, unpredictable, yet somehow perfect. Zip's digital assault sent the station's systems into a tailspin, alarms blaring like a symphony of chaos. Clank's jury-rigged contraption flooded the power grid, and for a moment everything went dark. "Hope you packed your sunglasses, folks," Zip chirped mentally. Flux focused on the pool of emotional energy she'd gathered, using it to guide them through the chaos. Her mind was a beacon, leading them towards freedom. But it wasn't just her strength. It was theirs, combined, multiplied, unstoppable. They navigated the Gloon station in a mad dash, dodging guards who seemed as confused by the situation as the humans were determined. Laughter bubbled up inside Flux, a wild, unrestrained joy that came from defying the odds. "Remind me to never do this again," Clank grumbled, even as he fought alongside them with grim determination. "Oh, come on, Clank," Zip retorted. "You love this stuff." "Admit it. Only thing I love more than this is not doing this," Clank shot back, but there was a hint of laughter in his mental voice. Finally, they reached the hangar bay where the Rustbucket awaited, its engines already humming with life as Zip's preprogrammed escape protocols kicked in. Home sweet home, Flux thought, feeling a surge of warmth at the sight of their ship. Sure, it was more scrap metal than sleek design, but it was theirs. They piled inside, and Flux took the helm, her hands feeling the familiar controls like a comforting handshake. As they blasted free from the Gloon station, she felt an exhilaration that was almost worth the chaos it took to get there. Into the void, the stars stretched out before them, a promise of freedom and a reminder of just how small but mighty they were. Flux let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and glanced at her crew. "Nice work, team," she said aloud, savoring the sound of their laughter. "Now let's get out of here before they realize what hit them." As the Rustbucket jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Gloons and their thwarted plans in the dust, Flux knew this was just the beginning. They'd turned the tide, but the war was far from over. But for now, they had each other, a ramshackle ship, and a universe full of possibilities. And if that wasn't worth fighting for, she didn't know what was. "Who needs a plan when you've got a crew like this?" she murmured as they sailed through the stars, daring the universe to try and stop them. Flux Durana stood in the cramped control room of the Rustbucket, staring down at the console like it was a misbehaving toddler. Her mind buzzed with the heady cocktail of fear and exhilaration, the familiar sting of potential disaster swirling around her. They had freed themselves from Gloon Station, but that was only the prelude. The real show was about to start, and it promised to be a blockbuster of catastrophic proportions. "All right, team," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 half-baked plans and a dash of desperation. "Time to play our ace and raise the stakes." Zip, perched cross-legged on the nearby control panel, grinned with a feral glee that might have unnerved anyone who didn't know her. Ready to give those Gloons a crash course in human fortitude, Clank, ever the voice of caution nestled within grumpy resignation, crossed his arms with a sigh. More like a crash course in human idiocy, but sure. "Let's see if we can ride this chaos wave all the way to their doorstep." Flux couldn't help but smile at their banter, even as a kernel of anxiety twisted in her gut. They'd made it this far on luck and a prayer, but that luck was a finite resource, and she'd never been particularly religious. Still, they had an ace up their sleeve, one the Gloons would never see coming: human emotion, raw and unfiltered, weaponized by desperation and a healthy disregard for self-preservation. "Remember," Flux began, strapping herself into her seat as the Rustbucket hummed with anticipation. "This isn't just about us. We've got a chance to strike a blow for everyone out there." "No pressure, right?" "Pressure's just a fancy word for motivation," Zip tossed back, fingers dancing over her scavenged laptop with the precision of a seasoned virtuoso. "Besides, what's life without a little death-defying risk?" Clank snorted, checking over the jury-rigged contraption he'd built with more hope than parts. "I'll take my risks without the death part, thanks." With the ship dialed in on the Gloon Command Center's coordinates, They had no choice but to trust in their combined insanity. They were going to hit the Gloons where it hurt, right at the heart of their operation. As the Rust Bucket barreled through the void, Flux reached out with her thoughts, feeling the presence of her crew like warm embers against the cold, uncaring universe. They were more than just a crew. They were a family, dysfunctional to be sure, but loyal to the bitter end. You guys ready to become legends, she thought, feeling the steady pulse of determination emanating from her companions. Legend. I was just hoping for a decent retirement plan, Clank quipped, his mental voice laced with dry humor. Retirement's for quitters, Zip shot back. We're here to rewrite the rules and maybe break a few while we're at it. The plan was as simple as it was insane. Use their own emotions to overload the Gloon's tech, turning the power of the humans as cattle initiative against its creators. The Gloons had underestimated the resourcefulness and sheer stubbornness of humankind. They'd see their fatal error soon enough. As they dropped out of hyperspace, the Gloon command center loomed before them, an imposing monolith of alien architecture. It was a grim reminder of their enemy's strength, but Flux refused to be intimidated. After all, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, or so she hoped. Time to put on a show, Flux announced, engaging the ship's meager weapon systems. Zip, Clank, you're on. Let's give them something to remember us by. Zip cracked her knuckles and dove into the digital realm with a fierce grin, her hands flying over her keyboard like it might escape if she stopped pounding it for even a second. Say goodbye to your data, suckers. Clank, not one to be outdone, activated his device, sending a pulse of energy rippling through space towards the Gloon systems. Hope you're ready for a bit of sabotage. You alien bastards. The Gloons, who had likely been enjoying a leisurely day of plotting interplanetary taxation schemes, were suddenly thrown into chaos. Alarms blared throughout the command center, a discordant symphony of confusion. Looks like we've got their attention, Flux noted dryly, watching the havoc unfold through the Rust Bucket's viewport. Now for the main event. Flux closed her eyes and focused, channeling the swirling emotions within her into a directed force. The Gloons had always seen humans as nothing more than emotional batteries, but they'd never considered what would happen if those batteries decided to fight back. She felt the energy surge from her, a tidal wave of human emotion crashing against the alien systems. The Gloons, unprepared for such an onslaught, reeled as their technology faltered under the strain. Feeling a little overwhelmed, are we? Flux thought with a savage satisfaction, knowing the Gloons would never hear her. Back in the Rust Bucket, Zip's whoop of triumph echoed through the comms. Looks like their systems are going down faster than a lead balloon in a gravity well. Clank, ever the pragmatist, still watched the situation with a cautious eye. Let's not celebrate just yet. We still need to get out of here in one piece. Details, Zip chided, but her fingers were already working to secure their escape route. Flux could feel the Gloon's psychic grip on human emotions loosening, their control slipping away as the tide turned in their favor. It was a heady sensation, knowing they'd managed to land a blow against such a formidable foe. Time to make our exit, folks, Flux commanded, hands steady as she guided the Rust Bucket through the chaos, weaving between the debris of the Gloon command center like a dancer avoiding an overeager partner. As they slipped back into the safety of hyperspace, Flux took a moment to savor their victory. It was a small one in the grand scheme of things, but it was a step towards something greater. Not bad for a day's work, she mused aloud, glancing at her crew with a mix of pride and relief. Zip grinned, reclining back in her seat with a satisfied sigh. And we didn't even die. Color me surprised. Clank shook his head, though his expression was softened by a rare smile. Speak for yourself. I think I aged a decade in the last Ior. Still not a bad way to stick it to the Gloons. Flux leaned back, letting the tension bleed out of her muscles as the stars stretched out before them. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. The Gloons wouldn't take this defeat lying down, but for now, they had a temporary reprieve, a chance to regroup, to plan, and most importantly, to hope. "Here's to us," Flux said, raising an imaginary glass in a toast. "May we continue to defy the odds and keep the universe on its toes." Her crew echoed her sentiment with laughter and mock cheers, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they'd done the impossible and lived to tell the tale. As the *Rustbucket* sailed through the void, Flux couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. They were more than just a ragtag band of misfits. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the universe had better brace itself for their next move. Because if there was one thing Flux Durrana and her crew were good at, it was rewriting the rules and showing everyone that humanity was not to be underestimated. Not now, not ever. The *Rustbucket* cruised through hyperspace like a geriatric hamster on a treadmill, creaking with every parsec. But who cared about creature comforts when you just made the Gloons eat a big, steaming plate of humble pie? Flux Durrana lounged back in her chair, a devil-may-care grin plastered across her face. If she was going to die in a rusted tin can, at least she'd do it with style. "Guess we gave them a little something to think about," she quipped, opening one eye to glance at Clank, who was fiddling with his jury-rigged contraption like it was a lover he couldn't quite figure out. Clank grunted, which was as close to a compliment as you'd get from him. "Think they'll want a rematch?" "Only if they like losing," Zip chimed in from behind her scavenged laptop, her fingers a blur on the keyboard. "Besides, can you imagine Ziek-Thal's face when he finds out they got outsmarted by a bunch of inferior humans?" The thought was delicious, like the first bite of a stolen dessert. Flux chuckled. "He'll probably tax the concept of surprise next. Or start a humans are too clever for their own good campaign," Clank added, rolling his eyes. As the ship hummed along, the crew nestled into a comfortable silence. They dealt a significant blow to the Gloons, but that didn't mean their troubles were over. The universe wasn't exactly known for rewarding good deeds with peace and prosperity. More likely, they'd get a pat on the back and a fresh hell to slog through. "Well, next stop, the Interplanetary Highway," Flux announced, cracking her knuckles. "And this time we're playing repair crew." "Awesome," Zip said, stretching her limbs. "I've always wanted to be underpaid and overworked." "Welcome to adulthood," Clank muttered, setting down his device. "Where dreams go to die." The *Rustbucket* emerged into the physical universe, the vast, sprawling network of the Interplanetary Highway stretching out before them like the world's worst traffic jam. Ships drifted listlessly, caught in the ceasefire chaos following the Gloons' retreat. It was like a cosmic parking lot, but with fewer honking horns and more existential dread. "Looks like a fixer-upper," Flux remarked dryly, surveying the tangled mess. "Let's see if we can inject some humanity back into this mess." The crew got to work, their hands and minds busy with the tasks of untangling, patching, and reprogramming. Flux felt a sense of grim satisfaction as they progressed. The highway was a vital artery for trade and travel across the galaxy, and its restoration was step one in getting humanity back on its feet. "There's something poetic about this," Zip commented, tightening a bolt with a bit more enthusiasm than necessary. "The Gloons thought they could break us, and here we are fixing their mess." "Poetry's just fancy whining," Clank retorted, but his eyes were fixed on the task, a rare determination in his posture. "But I suppose there's a certain satisfaction in cleaning up after your enemies. Plus, we get to mess with their tech in a way they never expected," Zip added, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Let's just say their tax software is getting an upgrade." Flux couldn't help but laugh. Trust Zip to find a way to turn even a tedious task into a chance for mischief. "I'm sure they'll appreciate our improvements." Hours passed, marked by the clatter of tools and the hum of circuits coming back to life. The highway slowly began to take shape, a patchwork monument to human ingenuity. It wasn't pretty, but it was theirs, and that was enough. As the final connection snapped into place, Flux let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Done and done. Who knew we could moonlight as cosmic plumbers?" Hopefully, The pay's better than sticking it to alien overlords, Clank grumbled, though he seemed pleased with their handiwork. The satisfaction of a job well done is its own reward, Zip intoned mock seriously, then smirked. And if you believe that, I've got a nice piece of real estate on Neptune to sell you. With the highway operational, Flux turned her attention to the next pressing issue, establishing a new order where human emotions weren't just fodder for alien power games. The Gloons had underestimated the power of human resilience, and it was high time the rest of the universe learned that same lesson. We need to make sure nothing like this happens again, Flux said, addressing her crew in the *Rustbucket's cramped bridge. The air was thick with the scent of recycled air and unwashed optimism. Our emotions are our strength, not a resource to be exploited, Clank nodded, folding his arms. So, what are we thinking? Some kind of galactic therapy session. More like a cultural revolution, Zip replied, her eyes alight with ideas. What if we make our emotions the new currency? A system where expressing yourself is as valuable as anything else. Leave it to you to turn a post-apocalyptic scenario into a motivational poster, Clank snorted, though he seemed intrigued by the idea. Flux considered it, her mind racing with possibilities. The Gloons had weaponized human emotions against them, but they could flip the script. By encouraging the sharing and celebrating of emotions, they could create a society where such exploitation was impossible. It's crazy, Flux admitted, but it might just work. If we frame our emotions as a source of power, something to be valued and respected, we can turn the tables. So what? We start a feelings exchange, Clank asked, one eyebrow raised. Bring your tears, trade them for smiles. More like an emotional renaissance, Zip said, her voice crackling with excitement. Imagine a society where expressing yourself is rewarded, where emotions can't be taxed or stolen. Flux nodded, a plan solidifying in her mind. We'll start small with the people directly affected by the Gloons. Show them that their feelings are valid and valuable. With that, the crew put their plan into action, reaching out to the scattered survivors of the Gloons' reign. It was a motley array of people, each with their own tales of survival and loss, but united by the shared trauma of being treated as emotional cattle. Flux found herself speaking to groups large and small, sharing stories of their fight against the Gloons, highlighting the power of human emotion. It was odd, seeing herself as an advocate for feelings when she'd spent so long keeping hers locked away, but there was something freeing in it too. Emotions are like the universe, she told a crowd gathered in the shadow of the newly restored highway. They're vast, unpredictable, and full of potential, and just like the universe, they're ours to explore and understand. There was a murmur of agreement, a ripple of hope spreading through the crowd like a gentle current. Flux felt a warmth blooming in her chest, a sense of purpose that was both terrifying and exhilarating. As days turned into weeks, the movement gained momentum. The *Rustbucket* became a symbol of resistance and renewal, a mobile hub for the emotional renaissance. People began to share their stories, their pains and triumphs, creating a tapestry of human experience that was as rich and varied as the stars themselves. Clank, for his part, found himself playing the reluctant hero, offering his technical skills to help rebuild communities and establish communication networks. It was a role he grumbled about, but Flux could see the pride in his eyes as he watched people connect and heal. Who'd have thought we'd end up saving the universe with feelings? He mused one evening as they sat together on the ship's bridge, watching the stars slip by. Not me, Flux admitted, leaning back in her chair. But I guess that's the beauty of it. You never really know where the universe is going to take you, or where you're going to take the universe, Zip added, joining them with her customary grin. We're rewriting the rules, one emotion at a time. Flux smiled, feeling the weight of the journey settle comfortably on her shoulders. They'd faced down the Gloons, restored the highways, and sparked a revolution in how humanity viewed itself. It was a start, and for once she felt a cautious optimism about the future. "Here's to rewriting the rules," she said, raising an imaginary glass once more. "To emotions, to humanity, and to whatever comes next." Her crew echoed her sentiment, their voices mingling with the hum of the Rust Bucket's engines. They'd come a long way from the ragtag band of misfits who first dared to challenge the Gloons, and they weren't done yet. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but they had each other and a newfound purpose. As the Rust Bucket sailed onwards, Flux felt a sense of peace she'd never thought possible. They were more than just a crew. They were a force for change, a testament to the power of human emotion, and a reminder that sometimes the best way to fight your enemies was to embrace what made you human. And so, with the interplanetary highway humming with life and the seeds of a new order taking root, Flux and her crew set their sights on the future. Because if there was one thing they'd learned, it was that the universe was always ready for a story worth telling.